Welcome to Ryan's Running Reviews in partnership with Roadrunner Sports, and today we're taking a look at one thick daily trainer. It's the ASICS GEL-Nimbus 25. Let's run with it. Now before we get started, I do want to say that these shoes were provided to me by Roadrunner Sports. However, I didn't have a chance to preview this video, and the final synopsis is my own. I also like to say please leave a like on the video and consider subscribing. Here we go. If you're not familiar with ASICS running shoes, the GEL-Nimbus is their max cushion neutral daily trainer, and I would go as far as to say, with the updates we see here, I would kind of classify this as an ultra max cushion shoe, basically meaning it's one of the thickest, largest midsoles around. And if we compare it to the Cumulus, you can see there's quite a bit of a difference. Now the Cumulus is their more moderately cushioned, more traditional neutral daily trainer, and for runners who want a little bit more cushion for the pushing, as they say, that's where the Nimbus comes in. And the Nimbus got a complete redesign here, so we got a lot to talk about. The Nimbus 25 comes in at 10.5 ounces, which is 0.3 of an ounce heavier compared to last year's version. Now, typically I don't like to see shoes go up in weight. However, I'm going to make an exception here, mainly because I think that 0.3 of an ounce increase buys us a lot of premium cushioning here. This shoe works really well for those easier days, recovery efforts, or times you have a longer run and just don't want to feel the ground at all and want that soft, bouncy ride. So even though it does go up in weight, I don't think it's kind of a big deal. And even though it's on the heavier end of things, I think the trade-off is worth it because of this midsole, which again, I'm going to touch on later. The Nimbus 25 does go up in price $10 and now costs $160, and with that price increase, it does buy us more midsole in the way of more stack height. So we have 4 more millimeters of stack height in the heel, 6 more millimeters of stack height in the forefoot, bringing us to 41.5 millimeters. That's a ridiculous number of stack height in the heel, and 33.5 millimeters of stack height in the forefoot for an updated 8 millimeter drop. On the previous Nimbus 24, it was a 10 millimeter drop, so they're bringing that down, making it an 8 millimeter drop, which I think they're doing this to make it a little bit more stable, so your foot comes in a little bit more flat to help kind of wrangle in this very thick, soft midsole. ASICS also made it a point to talk about the environmental impact of the Nimbus 25, saying that 90% of the polyester is recycled, and the sock liner does have a 45% reduction in CO2 emissions. And then below all that, in the midsole, it's made of 20% bio-based material. I believe it's sugar cane. So you do have some increased sustainability elements built into the Nimbus 25. Moving on to the upper, we have a single layer of an engineered knit material, and I will say, while I found it to be quite comfortable and I do like the look and feel of this fabric, it is going to be on the warmer side of things, which actually works out well because we're currently in the middle of winter. So we'll see how it holds up once we push into some of those warmer months, and then we'll see how it does in the middle of summer, but it is going to be on the warmer side of things, which makes sense for a knit shoe. Now, as far as sizing goes, I thought it was quite generous, wasn't too narrow with the midfoot and toe box, and I did find it to fit true to size, and I was quite happy with the fit here as well. And while we did get a complete redesign this year, they left the tongue the same as what we saw on the 24. So the 25 has the same tongue as the 24. It's the same stretchy knit-like material. You can just stretch this thing incredibly far, and I love it. Loved it on the 24. I love it here on the 25. You have these large holes which allow for ventilation, the upper on the warmer side of things, but the tongue does give you a little bit of breathability, which is quite nice. It's also fully gusseted, so it's not going to move around a whole lot, and when you want to get your foot into the shoe, you kind of grab this tongue, stretch it, and slide it right in, which I think works quite well. So I'm a big fan of this tongue. I like what they're doing here, and I hope they include it on more ASICS models. It's very thin, does a good job keeping the lace pressure off, and I think it's very comfortable, and I just love how stretchy this thing is. I mean, just look at that, it just stretches so much. Now, as far as the lacing system goes, you have a unique setup here. You have these little bits of kind of orange rope that allow the laces to not interact or go underneath the tongue, which I found to be quite good. And I found the lockdown here to be superb. ASICS is known for having a solid upper, and I don't think they ruined it with this complete redesign here. And the big reason for that is the heel counter. So the heel counter has a ton of padding. It's incredibly stiff. And again, this is what ASICS is known for. They're known for their really strong heel counters and really well-built uppers, and that doesn't change here. Had a great lockdown here, found it to be incredibly comfortable. And you do have this knit collar or ankle collar thing. Personally, I find this to be kind of pointless. It doesn't really touch or hug your ankle at all, so it doesn't even keep debris out, but it does interact with this pull tab in the back, which is also very elastic. So the tongue, very elastic, and heel pull tab, super elastic. But with all that being said, I found the upper to be very comfortable on the warmer side of things. It fits true to size, and the lockdown I thought was quite good. And if you're a fan of last year's tongue, you're going to be happy with the same thing here on the 25. And now for the midsole. It's a massive slab of Flight Foam Blast Plus. And if you're not familiar with the whole ASICS line, I'll break it down. You have Flight Foam, which we saw on a lot of the earlier models, You have Flight Foam Blast, which you saw debut on the Nova Blast. Then we have Flight Foam Blast Plus, which I think we saw debut on the previous version of the Nimbus, so the Nimbus 24. And then we also have Flight Foam Blast Turbo, which is seen like on the Metaspeed Sky and Edge, which are their super shoe race day carbon fiber plated shoes. So Flight Foam Blast Plus is basically one step below their Super Shoe Race Day shoes. It's incredibly soft and bouncy. So that kind of puts it into perspective with the rest of the ASICS line. And if we take a look at the Cumulus, which is the more moderately cushioned neutral daily trainer, this does feature Flight Foam Blast, not Flight Foam Blast Plus, which we see here on the Nimbus, which again is just going to be softer and bouncier. And boy, do we get a lot of it. And this is the gel Nimbus, so we have to talk about the gel, but you can't see the gel here. Typically you'll see some gel around the heel and they'll put like a dot in the forefoot, but it's not there. So what did they do? Well, they basically put it right below the heel. They're calling it PureGEL. It's a silicone-based gel. This is supposed to help with impact and shock absorption. Personally, I couldn't really feel it. I really have never been able to feel the ASICS gel in my shoes before, and that I think kind of holds true here. I'm actually kind of curious why they put it in the heel, mainly because you have this, it's the thickest part of the midsole in the heel, so it's not really kind of pushing in the firmest part. I'd be more curious to see if they put it in future versions in the forefoot, mainly because that's another high impact zone. I don't think it's necessarily required in the heel because you already have a ton of foam back there. But nonetheless, they do have a piece of PureGEL in the heel. I'll put a graphic on the screen so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Personally, didn't really notice it. I tried to put my, take the insert out and poke around and see if I could feel it. I wasn't able to, but it is there nonetheless, and this is kind of the new evolution that ASICS is doing with their gel technology. As far as my experience goes, it was quite fun to run in, mainly because when you have a shoe this thick, it just is just enjoyable. You don't feel the ground at all. You have a nice level of squish and energy return. However, it's not perfect. It's a little bit clunky and a little bit too soft for some of those faster paces. I think it works better for those moderate to slower runs, or if you're going on a long run and just don't want to feel the ground at all, or just need a nice level of impact protection. The other big piece here is the rocker geometry. So you can kind of tell how much it's curved here. It's a very noticeable rocker geometry, which is much appreciated due to the softness of that midsole. Helps roll you forward and keep you going. It's a rather stiff shoe. It's not the most flexible, so that pairs well with the rocker geometry because it helps you notice it a bit more, which again I think is important when you have a shoe this soft. So it's just a very luxurious experience, and unlike most other Ultra Max cushion options out there. As far as the stability goes, which I do think is an important factor when you have a midsole this thick and soft, I'll give it an okay rating, or slightly below average. It's by no means unstable, but if you compare it to prior versions, it's going to be a less stable gel Nimbus, mainly because the midsole is so thick and soft and does have more compression to it compared to prior versions. Now, if you're someone who does need stability out of a highly cushioned or Ultra Max cushion shoe, I might go in a different direction, but I think for most runners, it will be fine. And it's by no means an unstable shoe. I think it's just something to note, especially if you're comparing it to prior versions of the Nimbus. Moving on to the outsole, we still have plenty of rubber coverage, which I'm very happy to see, with exposed foam through the midfoot. AHAR Plus, their high abrasion rubber, which is supposed to be a little bit more durable in the heel, and then ASICS Light Rubber, which is supposed to be a lightweight rubber compound in the forefoot. I will say it's a more smooth pattern, especially compared to prior versions and if you compare it to other ASICS models, so just be a little bit wary for running on different surfaces. But for the most part, with this amount of rubber coverage, I was quite happy with it. It just isn't as grippy, just because you don't have as many deep lugs compared to other versions or prior versions of this shoe. So at the end of the day, this will probably be a very polarizing update, as it is completely different compared to the Nimbus 24. People will probably either love it or hate it. Personally, I love it because it's just a fun experience, and there's not many shoes that give you a ride quite like this. Very much like the upper, it is going to be on the warmer side of things. I absolutely love the tongue. I realize that's another polarizing thing, but it's just so much fun. It's easy to get your foot in and out of without compromising the lockdown and fit. We do have the new updated PureGEL in the heel, which I'm kind of confused by. I think they should move it to the forefoot. I think that makes a little bit more sense. Couldn't quite feel it because the midsole is quite thick, and that's the thickest part of the whole shoe. So we'll see what they do in the future, but it is quite nice to see the gel get an update that I think we've all been waiting for, and it's nice to see gel moving in a different direction. So I would love to hear from you. Put your thoughts down in the comments, and yeah, let's talk about it. Well, I'm Ryan from Ryan's Running Reviews, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks.